Today I've got another Dehancer tutorial for you, and I'm just going to break down for you how I created this look. If you don't know what Dehancer is a third-party plugin which allows you to create some beautiful cinematic and filmic type emulations. And it's an amazing tool for filmmakers and color grade artists to create some beautiful looking images. I'll leave a link to the Dehancer plugin in the description of this video, as well as a discount code that you can use to get a 10% discount. So I have this shot here, which I got from Artlist, which is a stock footage site. They also have music and tons of different things. I'll leave a link to that as well. And let's go ahead and get into the breakdown. I'm going to turn off my color grade. And this is our shot that we're going to be working with. And it was shot on the Red Komodo 6K. I only used 2 nodes for this color grade. I used Dehancer to create the bulk of the look. And then I used a serial node before the Dehancer node to just create the look adjustment that I wanted for this shot. And that's pretty much it. Most of the work is being done in Dehancer. So I'll go ahead and show you that first. So I'm going to collapse all the menus in Dehancer. And the first thing I did, which is what you should always do when you're using Dehancer, is to set the input. And again, this shot was taken on a Red Komodo 6K, so I input that camera information so that Dehancer was giving me a good conversion. For the film profile, I had it set to the Kodak Vision 3 50D. This is a sunset scene, so it's in bright daylight, and this is a good film stock for those types of lighting conditions. So after that, I went over to the print, and I applied the Fujifilm 3513 print film. After setting the profile, I went over to the target white and I brought it all the way to the left. This is essentially going to choose the warmer D55 variant of the 3513 film print. So it's going to apply a warmer look to the shot. Then I went over to the tonal contrast and I brought it up until I was getting some good separation in the lumen channel and was getting just a decent contrast going on the shot without pushing my blacks too far. I also had the analog range limiter turned on, and this basically sets a floor and a ceiling, which Dehancer has designed into the plugin that's going to help keep your image inside of a more filmic luminance range. And it's just going to help create that filmic aesthetic, which doesn't allow for a pure black in the image. And then after that, I went over to the color density and I turned it up to 30. After I adjusted the print, I went over to the film developer, I enabled it, and I turned up the color boost. When you're using Dehancer, it's a good idea when you're adjusting saturation to play around with the color boost and the color density and sort of balance these two out. The color density slider can give you a very beautiful filmic type effect, but too much of it can quickly blow out certain hues like reds and blues. You'll find sometimes that turning up the color density all the way and leaving the color boost untouched will give you a decent result. It might give you something that you'll like. You'll just have to play around with these controls based on your shot. And what I typically like to do is I like to set this halfway at around 50, and then I'll turn up the color boost to whatever saturation level I like for the shot. And then from there, if I feel like I like the saturation that's being applied, but I feel like the density is too much, then I'll turn down the density. And for this shot, that's exactly where I was. I had my color density around 30, and then I just had my color boost pushed up to a level that I liked. I also went into the film compression. I turned up the tonal range all the way so that it would affect basically the entire luminance range. And then I went into the white point and then just turned it down, which essentially brings up the brightest part of the shot. And I turned it up, or down rather, until I liked the brightness level that I was getting, which was somewhere around 63. And using this film compression tool just helps to decompress your highlights and bring back all that detail in them while still maintaining a smooth roll off in them. And those are basically all the color adjustments that I made in Dehancer. The other things I applied was a film grain. I went into the 35mm 50D film grain, and then after choosing this preset, I went over to custom so that I could adjust it, and I brought the amount down to a level that wasn't so prominent. I also went into the halation and chose the 35mm preset and just left it there. I felt like it was giving me a good, I'll actually zoom in here so I can show you what it's doing. It was giving me a good enough effect, and it was also very subtle. It wasn't really too, you couldn't really notice it too much in the shot. It just blended well with the rest of the warm colors. I also did the same thing inside of the bloom. I chose the 35mm preset and just left it as it was. And this is the shot before, and this is the shot after. It's just applying a nice little bloom around some of the edges in the shot. That's basically it for Dehancer. Now I'll show you what I did in this balance node here. So in this balance node, I went into my HDR panel and I warmed up the shot. So if we look over here at the global HDR wheel, we can see that the temperature slider is pushed up a little bit. Here's what the image looks like without this temperature adjustment. And here it is with that temperature adjustment. We have some color psychology and physics that we need to remember, and it's that warmer colors hit your eye quicker than cooler colors. Even though technically your warmer colors may be less saturated than your cooler colors, it might not appear that way, right? This might vary depending on shot, but it might not appear that way because those warmer tones are hitting your eye faster and they're standing out a little bit more. It's a little easier for them to stand out. You know, if you think of like things like traffic cones and stop signs and things like that, these are all warmer colors because it's easier for the human eye to notice it. So keep that in mind when you're creating a color balance in a teal and orange look. The warmer colors are gonna stand out more even with a little less saturation. After I warmed up the shot, I came over here to the highlight wheel and the light wheel, and I just created a little bit more color separation in the shot. This one here is adding some warmth to the highlights, and this one here is adding some of that teal into the upper midtones, lower highlights. And this is what the shot looked like before I went into my balance node and created that look. That's basically it. And you can try applying these to your shot to see if it gives you a good look. Keep in mind that this is going to depend a lot on the lighting conditions of your shot as well as the natural color palette of your shot. Again, if you're interested in getting Dehancer, there's a link to that as well as a discount code in the description of this video. And if you are interested in art list, there's also a link to that in the description of this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next tutorial.